guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Kate. I'm a health coach and I post videos on a high-fat, nutrient-dense way of eating. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, feel free to share, and make sure to subscribe. And make sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where I share new posts every single day. This video is going to be very different from my usual content. It's going to be a bit of a story time. Is that how you would classify this? It's going to be me telling my story, my experience, as you can see from the title, about me losing and then getting back, my cycle. Now, before we begin, I just want to say that I am someone who does not open up easily. I do not like talking about myself. This might seem so ironic because now I'm on YouTube sharing my life. Honestly, YouTube has helped me open up a lot and I guess overcome this fear and discomfort of talking about myself. Anyways, not really relevant, but yeah, I just wanted to say that I find this very, very awkward. And if you are watching this video, that means I posted it. I don't know if I'm going to post this. I wanted to share it mainly because I think it will help other people, women who are going through the same situation. Now, I haven't even started, but I know this is going to be a long video. I did write down some notes and try to make a bit of a timeline. So there's a lot to get through. Buckle up. Now, I did make a timeline, like I just said, but it might be a little bit off. It's hard to remember exactly when I made dietary changes and lifestyle changes, exercise changes. I'm just gonna go through it and try to remember the best that I can. But anyways, I think that's my intro. Let's get into it. Now, ever since I got my period, I can't remember exactly, maybe I was 12 or 13. It was extremely heavy, extremely painful. It was long. It was really, really not pleasant. I really don't want to go into details, but when I say extremely heavy, it's worse than you can imagine. My cramps used to be so bad on the second and third day. I would literally feel sick if I was at school. I would have to go home. But at the time, I didn't really tell anyone. I just kind of sucked it up. This is what having a period is like, or so I thought. After high school, a lot of my friends were on the birth control pill, and I knew some of them were taking it because of their cramps and things like that. So I started to think, oh, like I should get on that. And obviously didn't do any research into it. I think I might have been like 19 at the time. It did help a little bit. It did make my period a little bit lighter and a little bit less painful. The differences were marginal. Anyways, fast forward a few more years and I started getting into health. I started eating paleo, cut all refined sugar out of my diet. I was listening to a lot of health podcasts and was just really conscious about all this stuff. And one thing I kept hearing about was how bad the birth control pill is for you. You are pretty much just bombarding your body with all this estrogen. It's not natural. It's really not good to do long term. So I simply decided I was just going to stop taking it. And there were a few times in the years leading up to this that I had stopped taking it for a month or two, just because I was curious to see if, I guess I was magically cured and I wouldn't have to take it anymore. Every time I stopped taking it, I got my cycle the next month. It was just as horrible as I remembered, and then I would get back on the pill. No big deal, but not this time. This time I stopped taking it and the next month I didn't get my period. I thought this was strange. I obviously started Googling and a lot of the top results said that this was common. If you'd been on it for a while, you might not get it back for a couple of months, but no stress, it will come back in 2 or 3 months. So after 3 months, I still didn't have it back and I decided to go to my doctor. So just a regular GP. Told him my situation. He did some tests, a hormone test, obviously. He thought that I might have PCOS, so he had me go and get an ultrasound and go to a gynecologist. All of this came up with nothing. I did not have PCOS. All my hormones were normal. Nothing looked to be weird. And this was just the beginning of nobody having any idea what was wrong. Yeah, it was just really frustrating, really time consuming. He obviously had no idea what was wrong with me. I wasn't underweight, I wasn't overweight, I didn't have PCOS, I was in shape. Yeah, that was really frustrating. And at this time, I was thinking about getting into health coaching. I had just read Chris Kresser's book called Unconventional Medicine, which is all about functional medicine and getting to the root cause of disease, which is something that typical doctors don't do. They treat the symptoms and not the root cause. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go and see a functional medical doctor. And one more bit of relevant information I just wanted to add in is, I guess the year and a half before I stopped taking the birth control pill, I had been doing a lot of cycling. I was cycling between 100 and 200 kilometers per week. It really was my passion. I loved it. It was so much fun. I was in the best shape of my life. But obviously, a lot of female athletes who are super lean end up in the same situation that I was in, where they don't have a cycle. I didn't think I was exercising too much. Looking back on it, I probably was, and deep in my heart, I kind of thought, oh, I'm probably overdoing it. So around this time, I pretty much stopped cycling completely, which was very hard mentally. I loved it so much, and yeah, I tried to take things a bit easier, just do more yoga, weight training, little to no cardio, especially not for long periods of time. So that was definitely on my mind. I thought that could be a factor, and that maybe it was a problem that had been going on for a while, but the birth control pill was kind of masking the problem, so I didn't know it was an issue before. Anyways, from there, I went to see a functional medicine doctor, and this was not cheap. I think it was like $300 or $400 just for the initial consultation, but I knew they were going to have all the answers. Yeah, I really wanted to get it figured out. I was frustrated. And the doctor ran a crazy amount of tests on me. I have some of them written down because there's just so many. I did a glucose tolerance test, an insulin test, pretty much every nutrient you could imagine, my cholesterol, my thyroid, the glucose and the insulin test. I actually had to sit there and drink this glucose syrup, and then they would measure my glucose and my insulin at the time I consumed it, then 30 minutes after, then I think I consumed it again, and it was, I want to say 50 or 100 grams of pure glucose. It tasted like a freezy. You know those clear freezies? That is literally what it tasted like. Anyways, did all these tests, and out of everything, my glucose is normal, insulin's normal, most of my nutrients totally fine. My iron was a bit low and my iodine was a bit low. So he prescribed me iron tablets and iodine. But other than that, he couldn't figure out what was wrong. He said maybe because my iron was a bit low, that's why I wasn't having my cycle. So I took both of these consistently for over 6 months, and my iron levels were then normal, my iodine was normal, but I still didn't get my cycle back. I went back a few more times to the functional medicine doctor. He really didn't have any answers for me. Again, I was just really frustrated. I had spent all this money because it wasn't cheap to go see him. And I think this was probably a year now without me having a cycle. I had not been riding my bike, doing crazy exercise for at least 6 months, a little bit more. I had put on a few kilos, so gained a little bit of weight. Since my crazy cycling days, I've probably put on 5 kilos. I was never underweight, but yeah, like I said, I was just doing so much cardio. Now I've definitely put on some muscle, put on a bit of fat, still well within the healthy range. Oh, and there's one other bit of relevant information I just want to put in here, is that when I originally lost my period, I was eating paleo. I hadn't been eating refined sugar, any processed food for at least a year before that. So my diet was already like very on point. By the time I was seeing the functional medicine doctor, I was on keto. I thought that might help as well, but no luck. So now I was just starting the carnivore diet, I think. And someone recommended I go see a naturopath because they had lost their cycle and a naturopath had figured out the problem and helped them. At this point, I was totally exhausted. I'd done all the tests. No one knew it was wrong. Okay, I'll go see a naturopath. And I know a lot of people are going to cringe at that and maybe judge me for that, but I had exhausted a lot of my options in terms of Western medicine before this. At this point, I had been eating carnivore for a couple of months, like mainly carnivore. I did 100% strict carnivore for 1 month, and then I started to add back in a few plant foods, but since then I've been mainly carnivore. So at this time I went to see the naturopath. It was obvious that she was more plant-based. She did get me to do, what did we do? Like a saliva hormone test and also a saliva cortisol test. Oh, okay. This is where the story gets, well, it was a bit traumatic for me. So I did this hormone test. I think I have the results. Yeah, here. And I go back in to see her after I've done this test. We're going through the results and she's pretty much telling me that all my hormones are so messed up. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've had 3 hormone tests in the last 12 months and all of them have been totally normal. Why is this one so messed up? For example, there was one hormone that my number came back at 3,563 and the reference range was supposed to be between 15 and 350. And I was 3,500. And she was telling me she had never seen a level so high in someone that wasn't pregnant. So, that was terrifying. Yeah. She actually listed all these other things that were wrong with my tests. My cortisol was apparently really, really low. And the common symptoms of having low cortisol were like fatigue, depression, allergies, fibromyalgia, hypoglycemia. Those are the symptoms, and I wasn't experiencing any of those. And she's telling me I have really low cortisol, that I possibly have Addisons disease. And she starts telling me about Addisons disease, and it is terrifying. It is a very serious disease, telling me that if you catch it early, you can manage it, but if you don't, you can die. So I'm sitting there and she's giving me all this information, telling me everything's messed up, like impaired glucose management, she wrote down, immune imbalance. I'm just sitting there like, I pretty much left there and was just bawling my eyes out. I was so terrified that I had Addison's disease. I went home, started Googling, decided that I was pretty much on my deathbed. And first, before we had these tests, she prescribed me all these tonics and this and that, a couple different vitamin mixtures, pretty much just took my money. I was willing to try anything though. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to not try taking all this. Then I go back for the next appointment and she tells me this is way out of her pay grade. My problems are too serious and that I need to go see an actual GP, and we were back at the start. So I went from 2 doctors telling me that there was nothing wrong with any of my tests, nothing they could find, to someone telling me I was completely messed up. And yeah, like I said, I just went home, I was bawling my eyes out, I thought I was gonna die. I later found out that saliva hormone tests are actually not very accurate. Go figure. I really don't want to hate on naturopaths, but I just had such a bad experience that Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So from there, I went to a normal GP who specializes in women's health and brought her all my test results from the past year and a half. She looked them over, didn't really see anything jumping out at her. She said I should get another thyroid test because she thought maybe something was up with my thyroid and that was causing me to not have a cycle. Okay, did another thyroid test and came back totally fine. Everything was within the reference ranges. So she didn't know what was wrong. At this time, I was eating mainly carnivore still. My exercise, I was going to the gym a couple times a week and doing weight training, maybe doing like one day of cardio, playing hockey or something. So she recommends I see an endocrinologist, which is someone who specializes in hormones. And she's like, maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe they'll see something in your results and be able to figure out what the problem is. They're going to be able to interpret this better. Okay, I'll go to an endocrinologist. So at this point, I didn't have my period for a year and a half. And oh my God, it was just, it's a sign that something is wrong. It's really frustrating when everything else is checking out as totally normal. So I went to the endocrinologist. He looked over everything, all my tests. I still have them all. And he's kind of like, okay, well, there's one thyroid hormone that you haven't been tested for yet. I want to do another test and we'll see if that means anything. Okay, so I was really frustrated because I went there and he seemed like he was grasping at straws. Had another thyroid test, and this time my TSH came back high, but my antibodies were normal and my free T4 was normal. And my TSH was only slightly high. Now, I'd had this tested before and it was always within the reference range, so he said it looked like I had hypothyroidism. Maybe that was the problem. And what they do to treat that is they pretty much give you a synthetic hormone that restores everything to adequate levels. And I kind of said to him at the time, okay, well, I literally had this same thyroid test last week and it was normal. So why is it different now? Didn't really have an answer. I was like, okay, well, if I go on this medication, can I get tested after? Can I see if, is there any way to improve it where I don't have to be on the medication? He said, no, this is a progressive thing. Now that you have it, it's only going to get worse and worse. We're going to have to keep upping your dosages. And I'm like, okay, it's an answer. So not thrilled about it, but I started taking the prescription. And what he said to me was, take it for 3 months, get another thyroid test. We'll see what your levels are at, and then come in. It was just a really small dose because, like I said, I was only just outside the reference range. I was not happy taking this medication. I found that it made me hungrier. It was supposed to speed up your metabolism. I didn't have a weight problem. It just made me hungrier all the time and thinking about food, and I was really, really frustrated by this. I worked really hard to get my hunger under control and get to a place where I was just happy and didn't have to worry about food, and now I was back to being hungry. At the end of 3 months, I booked in the blood test. I booked in the doctor's appointment. I still didn't have my cycle. A couple days before my appointment, I got my period. And when I got it, it was so light in comparison. It lasted only 3 days. I didn't get any cramps. I didn't feel sick. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. So I was thrilled, obviously. I went in and told him, and he's like, oh, thank God, if you didn't get it back. I had no idea where we were going to go from here. All your thyroid hormones are normal on your most recent test that you just had. So from there, I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll keep taking the thyroid medication. I don't know if this is what worked or if it was me eating more animal foods, me getting lots of iron into my diet. I have a strong feeling that the liver capsules had something to do with it. They also contain a little bit of kelp, which is iodine, which is really good for your thyroid. So even if that was a problem, that could have helped. although I'm not totally convinced that I had a thyroid problem. I feel like something got messed up. But yeah, I decided I would keep taking the medication, make sure that I continued to get my cycle, and maybe go into my GP in 6 months, reevaluate, and see what she had to say. So anyways, I had another prescription from him that I was gonna fill when my current one ran out. When it ran out, I realized I couldn't find the next prescription, so I kind of delayed and was just putting off giving them a call. But during this time, I continued to get my cycle. And yeah, since then, it's just been totally normal. It has been incredible in comparison to what it was before, pre-pill, and even during the pill. So obviously, the story has been all over the place. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly what made the difference in the end. Even if the thyroid medication was the reason that I got my period back, the fact that it is now so much more manageable, I'm not in pain, I think that has to do with my diet. Eating high amounts of animal protein and fat, very little carbs, not doing chronic cardio. I think, oh, it's really hard to tell if that made the difference, because I did stop doing that pretty early on in this story. But then again, it could have taken a while for my body to, I guess, rest and relax. I do think the beef liver capsules that I take every day could have played a part as well in keeping my iron and my iodine up. Yeah, I gained about 5 kilos from the start of this story to the end of it. So maybe I was a little bit lean in the start, but these are more or less all the changes that I made, and everything that I've listed I've stuck to since I got my cycle back, and it has continued on. Anyways, I think this video has went on for long enough. I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope that at least one person finds value in this story. Yes, my journey was very, very frustrating at times, but I don't regret anything I tried during it. I think you just need to be open to everything. Again, everyone is different. So if you are going through something like this, what worked for me might not work for you. But anyways, if you have gone through something similar, I'd love to hear your story and your experience in the comments down below. I think this is a more common issue than we think it is. It's not something I see people posting about very often. Thank you guys for sticking around. If you've made it this far in the video, you are the best. I will see you guys next time. Bye.